Hello and welcome to this edition of Joy in Our Town. My name is Ferrell Tata. I'm your host, and I am delighted today to welcome my guest, State Senator Jeff McWaters. Our issue today is civic, and we are going to be discussing the civic affairs of Virginia. Welcome to the program, Jeff, and thank you for being here with us.
Appreciate it.
Now, we know you're a state senator. You represent the eastern part of Virginia, but before you got into politics, you were a businessman. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I had some wonderful opportunities in business as a young person, being exposed to a lot of new innovations in the healthcare industry. And so working with a lot of entrepreneurs gave me a chance to learn businesses from the ground floor up in the healthcare and health insurance area. And so used those talents and skills in 1994 here in Virginia Beach to start what became a national company called AmeriGroup Corporation. And large employer here in town, several thousand employees and across the country, operating in about 14 states. And the objective was to help states modernize and improve the quality and the cost of their Medicaid systems. So I spent a lot of time in a lot of state houses, talking to a lot of legislators, a lot of governors all across the country in creating AmeriGroup. Really unique experience, an experience where the company, starting in '94, but went public in 2001. And that's a whole nother interview someday. This 9/11/2001 was the day we went public. And one of the first companies, actually the first company to get public after 9/11. A lot of great American heroes that we met in that process in New York and other parts of the country. The company was public, and I was able to retire in 2008. And the company has continued to do well and was recently sold about a year ago to a large health insurance company.
So that is amazing, and I know they've done wonderful work, but transitioning from business to politics, that must have been quite a shock. Can you tell us a little bit about your time in politics, especially at the beginning when you were making that transition?
Yeah, thank you. I think that for me, the transition was probably a little different than it is for most business people. You know, the reason is probably since about 1990, so 28 years or so of my career, I think that sounds about right. At the time I was involved in state government, helping states make key decisions about their biggest expenditure, the Medicaid program. So I was in many meetings with governors and legislators and moving the process along both at the federal and the state level. And so I had a pretty good insight into what that job would actually entail and what it was about. So I do see some huge differences between the way government thinks and the way business thinks. People ask me a lot, what are some of those? And in many ways, there's some similarities too. Similarities of large organizations with lots of people that you have to move in a certain direction and influence in all kinds of ways. You can't run a big organization and simply tell people what to do every day with thousands of employees spread across the country. So there are some actually some things that are also similar between, getting your ideas. You're in the process of selling the best idea and finding the best idea and marketing those ideas with fellow legislators. And in some ways, business is the same thing.
So you were able to use a lot of your skills and experiences and apply it to the political world.
I think so. I think I'm still learning how to do that some. I've only been in it, this is finishing my 5th year. But yeah, a lot of things I had done in the past, processes I had been involved in, and just, some good old patience from the Lord, I guess, to help you get things accomplished that may take a lot longer than you would have thought.
Now, can you talk about some of the legislation you've been involved with that's had the most impact for the Hampton Roads area?
Sure. In Hampton Roads specifically, because we serve at the state level, so a lot of what we do is across the state, and all the laws that we pass are statewide. But we had an interesting group come here, being from Virginia Beach, that had an issue with sand replenishment. And the way the laws were written, if you had a piece of property that storm had damaged, or for whatever reason water came into that part of your yard or part of your lot or your business, etc. The rules in Virginia, and I think they were antiquated, if that sand was replenished, if that property was brought back, then that property was the property of the Commonwealth of Virginia, not the original property owner.
Wow.
And so we even had people that had their backyard, a piece of property that was a part of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and then their backyard again, and then the water.
Oh my gosh.
And so we changed that law, and I was glad to do it. It helped out some property owners in a significant way. I love to find laws that we can change or do away with. A lot of my friends get excited about new legislation. I get excited about legislation that stops rules, stops regulation that is intrusive to business.
Well, we need that,
Yeah.
believe me. So, and speaking of that, the economy, how do you see the economy in this area? Has it gotten better, worse, stay the same?
Yeah, I think that we went through certainly a dip like many parts of the nation, but I think our dips here are mitigated some because we are such a large employer of military families and those that support the military operations. And so I think from that standpoint, you know, while we don't have the highs that some of the communities have, but luckily we're blessed we don't have some of the lows that some of the communities have. I think things are coming back slower than we'd like to see them in some ways. We've had sequestration, which has had a serious impact. We've had a lot of budget delays, both at the federal and recently at the state level, which creates this uncertainty for business. And it creates an environment where people are kind of slow to want to invest in new products, invest in new divisions, or even in some cases come to Virginia. So my job as a legislator is, you know, keep business here in Virginia and make business as Virginia friendly as we can. We did a bill, you asked about legislation, we did a bill 2 years ago, we call it kind of a business one-stop, that allowed employers to set their business up much more quickly with one division of government rather than having to deal with 3 or 4 different divisions of government. So every time I look at a piece of legislation, I look at it from the viewpoint of, will it help attract business and industry to Virginia or keep businesses and industry that we've had here stay?
So it's obviously very important to support the local business. And so can you talk about some of the things that you are doing to support the businesses just in this area?
Well, we, you know, one of the things we try to do very, very aggressively is reach out to local businessmen and women and find out just what are their issues, what are keeping them from being able to hire people, expand product lines, et cetera. And that's how we get most of our key legislation. This Business One-Stop bill, for example, was a process where we did that. You know, and that in addition to the big investment that we've had to make in transportation here in Virginia to get caught back up. I hope the viewers that are now watching will see over this summer into the fall the significant investments that they have made as taxpayers, frankly, in our transportation grid. That's been a big issue for employers coming into this area. They want to make sure they can get their goods and services out of the beach with the tunnel systems we have and out to the rest of the world. So we're unique in our transportation opportunities here with the port, with the rivers, with the Chesapeake Bay, and right on the Atlantic Ocean. But that also creates some opportunities for us to get goods and services out of this area. So the transportation bill and a lot of other things that we've looked at to try to make it more business friendly here in Virginia.
So how has your relationship been with the other legislators in this area? Because we have so many different communities and we have local mayors and so forth. How do you work with them? And
yeah, that's a great question. We've had some changes, as you're familiar with. Even some of your family's been involved in the legislative process here, and I guess even in North Carolina as well. But we have a really good group here, a very strong group, and we are really committed to working together and representing our community. We just think that's extremely vital. Other parts of the state, frankly, have been a little better at that than we have in this area. But in the last 2 or 3 years, communication, meetings, understanding what legislation people are pushing for, working with the local mayors, of which we have 7 in this community, working with business leaders. I'm just in the process of scheduling a couple more roundtables with business leaders here and with 3 mayors in the area and with military leaders to stay constantly on the leading edge of what are their issues and how, when we go to Richmond, can we work to solve those.
Now, speaking of military, I'm glad you brought that up. We all know the elections, every election, it comes up about the voters and voter registration and everything. What are you doing to ensure that the military who are deployed or in war are being able to be heard through?
That's a great question. Thank you. You know, it's always been on my heart ever since I've been up there at Richmond. How can I help military families? We have this great concentration of military families here in Virginia Beach and Norfolk and the entire oceanfront area. And every time I get an opportunity to look at a piece of legislation, either my own or someone else's, I really try to jump on that. So this past year, well, 3 years ago, I had a bill to ensure that men and women who were either on submarines or carriers or cruisers, whatever, deployed, or in a mountainside base camp in Afghanistan, that they have the opportunity to vote. And we have found evidence that those votes come in sometimes late and many times deployed men and women of our military either can't get to the opportunity to vote, or when they get there, the votes don't get in time. And I think the men and women serving our country should be the most important people.
Absolutely.
Who have the opportunity to say who their candidate that they're selecting should be. So I worked with Senator Tata Puller the last 2 years, a Democrat, me being a Republican, to get Senate Bill 11 passed. It passed this year, which for the first time gives men and women the opportunity electronically through a secured system to vote on an absentee basis, so that their vote, their opportunity to see what the candidates' positions are, as well as quickly get that vote returned and be counted, is a very important piece of legislation that goes into effect July 1.
That is amazing. That's wonderful. I know they're going to be happy about that. Now, I know you are very involved in community programs and the community in general. What are some of the initiatives you're doing to help the community?
Yeah. Well, you know, there's so many things that go on in Virginia Beach, but an issue that to me, again, a military-related issue has been wounded warriors and things that we can do to outreach to those, again, men and women who have given everything and are finding it hard to either get a job back in the community where they want to work or have health issues, et cetera. So we had a lot of fun. I think you know I'm in a band called Guava Jam, and we put our band together with a band called Strictly Business. So about 20 musicians on stage down at King Neptune Park a few weeks ago. 3 hours of music, no breaks, 55 songs, and just had a great time and helped raising money and awareness for the USO Wounded Warrior Program. We've had opportunities to do several events like that, and we're very open when we can find a way to use some fun resources and a fun outreach to get community awareness on these issues. And then just last week, a team of over 100 volunteers worked together all Friday morning and afternoon to put out 12,000 great American flags under the mailboxes of 12,000 homes here in the Virginia Beach area in my district. And just a great effort. It's so wonderful to see the volunteers turn out. For many people, this was their second year to do it. We did 12,000 this year, the most we have done ever, 8,000 last year. And it's just neat to look down the street and see the flags waving and get the high fives and the thumbs up when people come by in their cars or step out of their homes. It's a reaction that you wouldn't necessarily expect, and it just shows the patriotism and love we have for the men and women that have served us.
Jeff, I mean, I just think what you're doing for our community, for our state, is just phenomenal. And we're going to go to a break in just a minute here, but I really want you to tell the viewers, that when you did retire from Amerigroup, and you could have just gone and sailed off on a boat and, sat under a palm tree.
Or done interviews with people on television, right?
You know, you could have done anything, and
No,
yet you could, but you made a decision to commit your life to public service. What went into that decision?
Well, I think thinking about the issues that are facing our kids and our grandkids, I really take it to that kind of a deep commitment, and I think it's a part of my faith as well to try to use the resources that God's given me best I can to affect change for generations to come. I mean, let's face it, I know you have kids in college and young kids still at school, and it's just so important that these kids understand what America is about, how it's different than other countries, and why it's different, and how we have been so successful, and what have the contributions and the investments that have been made by people that have gone before us. So I think I'm happy to talk more about it after the break and give you more thoughts about that.
Well, thank you. And yes, we are here with State Senator Jeff McWaters, and you've been watching Joy in Our Town. I'm Ferrell, and we will be back after the break to talk about some specific bills that Jeff McWaters has been working on. Welcome back to this edition of Joy in Our Town. I've been talking to State Senator Jeff McWaters, and we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to start talking about public safety, and our topic is transportation in Hampton Roads. Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
Thank you again for being with us.
Sure.
So you passed a very important transportation bill in the General Assembly last year. Can you talk a little bit about it and how it affects our area?
Yeah. We hadn't had any new monies for transportation since 1987, and inflation and other things were just overcoming the amount of revenues that we had from taxpayers to deal with modernizing our roadways, our tunnels, and our bridges. And as you know, living here in Hampton Roads at the oceanfront in Chesapeake Bay, that our cost of getting people through bridges and tunnels is much different than other parts of the state. So while I'm very much interested in cutting the cost and size of government and reducing taxes, this is one area that we had to make some changes. Now, since 2007, the general fund, not the transportation fund, the general fund, for the most part, has stayed flat, with the one exception of Medicaid increasing. And we can talk about that later if you'd like. But the transportation revenues were also flat, and with the cost of everything going up over the past 15 or 20 years, we just couldn't keep up. And I think people see a visible sign of that if they're on 264 or 64 in this area, and we'll continue to see that over the next year or so. The major project that I've been probably the most focused on is the gateway, the entryway to Virginia Beach, Interstate 264. And so people over this summer and into the fall will see continued work fixing the concrete, and then we will be putting as much as 5 or 6 inches of asphalt over top of that. There'll be significant improvements, all of which should be completed in 2015. We could have never done that without this investment. $111 million investment in a new overpass. You know, when you look, you're on the highway system and you see a big cloverleaf or overpass, it's hard to imagine that those cost in excess of $100 million. But we'll be doing a new one on 64 for the military highway exchange there. That's another big investment we'll be making. And then the widening of 64 from Hampton Roads area halfway up to Williamsburg, 5.5 miles of widening a highway that is very dangerous and very congested. And that work, engineering, will be completed this year, and that work will start next year. And then we'll also start some engineering for the last 5.5 miles of that, which will complete us up to Williamsburg, Virginia. And then the hard work we're doing out on 460. We just can't lose 460 as an important escape plan for the citizens of this area in case of a major hurricane, and just for the opportunity with the ports, with the changes that have been made in the ability to move goods and services. We've got to have that 460 artery. So we're working with the governor to make sure he understands just how important that is. And in fact, we'll be in some meetings this summer to really find out what's going to be the best solution, the most cost-effective solution for 460. And there's other things we could talk about, but the investment that people have made in Hampton Roads and across the state in transportation, we're going to use every penny as wisely as we can. We know how hard people work, and we know people don't want to pay more taxes unless it's absolutely, completely necessary and going to be reinvested in a way that they can see the benefit.
Everyone that's watching this is going to be thrilled at the news about widening those roads and some of the other projects you're talking about. In the past, you know, we know that a lot of the money that state money has gone to Northern Virginia. What is the process? Is it because of the Secretary of Transportation and the combined work of the legislators? You were able to get some of the money funneled down here. Yeah,
each year a 6-year plan is done. And when I came in and looked at how we were benefiting in this part of the state from that 6-year plan, I felt like that we had been behind. And so with Governor McDonnell over the last 4 years and the changes we were able to make in the Commonwealth Transportation Board, I think that we made great headway. Now, I will say that some of those changes have kind of gone the other way recently with our new governor, and we're down to perhaps only one person representing this area as opposed to 3 on the Commonwealth Transportation Board. So I'm trying to work with the governor to make sure he understands that. But we're blessed to have Aubrey Lane, who is from our area, as our Secretary of Transportation. So I think the next couple of years, it's important that we fight for the investment in this part of the state. And as well as we put in local dollars, which we've done in this transportation bill.
So what are some of the biggest issues that we do face going forward?
Well, we really have some significant investments in mega projects, like are we going to put a new tube in at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, for example. In addition to that, the Patriots Crossing that's been discussed from Norfolk over to the Monterey-Merrimack Bridge, 460 as I discussed, other rail projects that we are very interested in. So we're looking at some ferry services in certain areas to relieve congestion. So there's a lot of things that are being looked very aggressively at. The new downtown tunnel that's being completed in downtown Norfolk. Just a lot of investment in infrastructure, but there's some huge, huge mega projects which are also kind of on the drawing board and have to get funded. And I'm glad to say that we will now have the funding to do not all of them immediately, but over time, over the next 10 plus years, hopefully get them all accomplished.
So the tolls that we've already seen now with the downtown tunnel, are we going to start seeing that in other?
Yeah. You know, I've looked at that, and I do think there are some issues with those tolls. I think the inflation factor on those tolls makes it unaffordable for most people, especially workers and students who have to come in and out of those tunnels every day. But I will say that it's very hard, almost impossible, to finance some of these mega projects without some degree of a use fee or a toll. So I think, unfortunately, we will see them, but I think we will be able to control them more effectively than what was done in that situation. And one of the ways by doing that is a bill that Senator Wagner and I worked on this year, which was to have a local authority that's accountable for how the money's spent and where the tolls are and how much the tolls are, using as a way to kind of balance across our regions so that one area over the other isn't being hurt inappropriately. So I do think the localness of that decision-making process will solve a lot of the problems that we've seen on tolling.
Well, what I like about that, too, is you'll have local people making decisions about, the people that have to actually pay and go through those.
That's right, and the people that have to get elected by local people as well.
There you go. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the port? You mentioned the port earlier.
Wow,
What's going on with the port?
What a tremendous asset. I was recently with some friends in South Carolina and talking about their port situation. They have two very aggressive competing ports down there. We know that the Panama Canal is being modernized and widened, and that it creates opportunities for ships to have deeper drafts in the 50 range, I guess it is. I'm not an expert on shipping, but it requires us to have deeper dredges. We know we're going to be ahead of some of the South Carolina and perhaps even ports to the north of us. So being the modernized port for Virginia and even serving North Carolina, being so close to serving industry in North Carolina is vital for us. And so I know we've tried to make some changes there to the boards and to leadership. The governor has, and I think he's, hopefully we're off to the right start there to really improve our competitiveness and our technology to be a world leader in a world-class port that we have. It's a tremendous, tremendous God-given asset that not very many communities, virtually none, have. And I really want to continue to try to work to, and transportation is a big part of that. It's one thing to get the goods here cheaply, but if you can't get them into mid-America or into the South or Southeast or up in the Northeastern corridor quickly and cheaply, then you're of no benefit and the ships will go other places.
That's right. Well, and since we're talking about the port and also public safety, what is being done to make sure, as far as homeland security and making sure that our borders are safe?
Yeah. Well, there is a significant amount of risk that we have in shipping so many containers in and out of our area. And I have met with the Coast Guard, with Congressman Ridgel recently with the Coast Guard to see what we can do to make sure that we're emphasizing and putting all of our resources into the areas that have the highest risk. And I'm not an expert in those kinds of risk, but I have seen evidence of some Coast Guard and other resources being used, I think, in a less appropriate way, and had some good discussions with local citizens, local law enforcement, on how to try to make sure we're putting the emphasis on the port and on the container evaluation process, et cetera. But it's going to continue to be a risk and something that we will have to continue to very aggressively monitor.
So going forward, I know transportation's a big issue around here, but what are some of the things that trouble you the most that you want to really see change in our community? Yeah.
Well, I think that I don't want to kind of overstep my boundaries as a state legislator. My job is to try to help across the state with issues and help our local community with issues. So I try not to really get into the day-to-day operations of the various mayors and the various city councils that they have. But I try to stay tuned in and then determine, based on what their needs are, how can we as a state and people being taxed by the state and being represented, how can we make sure that those are the right decisions, and then where appropriate get state help in accomplishing that. I think, in the last few years, our mayors have come together in a much more effective way on transportation, on other regional projects, but I think that you can never stop doing that. On the one hand, we're blessed with 7 to 10 communities in this area. On the other hand, that's 7 to 10 different jurisdictions that new employers coming into a community have to deal with. And being a business person, a CEO of a big company, making decisions and comparing, do I put assets into Virginia Beach, Norfolk, or do we put assets into other parts of the country, Atlanta or South Carolina, or other parts of the country that are, aggressively also trying to pursue business. So how can we remain competitive? And that competitiveness has to be surrounded by transportation, low cost government, and great schools. So I think keeping Virginia schools #1, and they are #1 in many categories, is of vital importance. And so we're working with the leaders of those schools, the boards of visitors, et cetera, to make sure that this transportation system that we're building is going to allow for jobs. Do we have the educational programs, the workforce development programs, our TCC and our community college system? So vital that 43 community colleges in Virginia were the best systems in the country and in the world, in fact. And we have got to make sure that the students that we're producing are capable of fitting the jobs that employers have, want, and need. So that match of what do employers need versus how we're educating our young men and women, to me, is one of the greatest challenges that we have coming up.
Well, Jeff McWaters, I cannot thank you enough. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate your time today. And just as we close out this show, if you could just give people your website in case people want to reach out and contact you directly.
Yeah, just jeffmcwaters.com. And if you have a great business idea or community idea or something we can help you with, feel free to call our office. Again, it's jeffmcwaters.com.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you. And Ferrell, good to see you.
And Ferrell, Tata, Join Our Town. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day.
This program has been sponsored by the Trinity Broadcasting Network and made possible by your telethon dollars. Your continual support can keep Join Our Town brought to your home every day. So write Join Our Town, P.O.